Thank you for being here. I think it was last week that I spoke at length on APNU's lack of vision, lack of a development strategy, or any coherence in their economic thinking. And I demonstrated, in contrast, what we are hoping to achieve and also the planning process that we have embarked upon and the outcome of that planning process in terms of specific projects and programs to accomplish the vision that we laid out. So APNU, in response to that, issued a press statement on the 4th of November. And I don't know how many people have seen this press statement because very few people actually read what they say now. But I was very surprised that the Starbuck News would say something, give it a headline. It says, APNU says its ultimate objective is a livable income for all as it outlines development strategy. Now, if you look at this press release that they issued, this is like, I don't want to be harsh, but really, it's just a set of slogans put together in 5 areas. This can't be a development strategy. I was telling you about the development strategy that we worked on that's 3,000 pages long in 7 volumes. This is APNU's development strategy. And that is what Starbuck says. It outlines a development strategy. So listen to the elements of this development strategy and think about it, if you can come up with better than this. It has no specifics, absolutely a set of slogans. Maximize the revenues that the country earns from our vast oil resources. That's strategy 1. Reducing financial waste, inefficiencies, and corruption in government spending. It will, and it calculated it will save $200 billion a year by doing this. Expanding the non-oil economy, building infrastructure, and creating a dynamic and supportive environment for the prospering of small businesses. This is their development strategy. Any first-year UG student could come up with a more detailed vision than this one here. And it's a rehash of a lot of some of the things. So they will increase profit faster by not allowing new projects to go ahead in the oil and gas industry so that we can get more money initially. But we've gone through this issue before, and we've pointed out how short-sighted that could be because you will not maximize long-term development in this country, and it can't be sustained. And so we've seen this point about maximizing revenues in the oil and gas industry is very consistent with APNU's philosophy of eating everything out before not investing in the future. And this was clearly demonstrated in the 5 years that they were in government, when the capital budget for every one of those 5 years was lower than 2014's capital budget. So effectively, they were just eating up all of our revenue without building long-term infrastructure that will create future growth, future income, more jobs, etc. Consistent with that. They're reducing financial waste, etc., and collecting $200 billion a year. You recall a few weeks ago I spoke about Gulsaran, and he calculated, they did that exactly in 2015. They said the same thing in 2015, citing Gulsaran then. They didn't cite Gulsaran now. In fact, under APNU, we went in the other direction. So the rental of buildings in government in the 5 years grew by over $1 billion more per annum. That is, we have now reduced that back since we got into office. The vehicles, maintenance and purchase of new vehicles was about $1.5 billion more per year. Food in government, that is dietary, increased by over $1.6 billion a year. That is how they reduce waste. We've had, you hear about a lot of tenders now. Oh, the tender may not have been done properly. Under the APNU era, if you check the newspapers, you will see that very few projects were actually tendered. And we have this documented. So this is pure nonsense again. Expanding the non-oil economy. Oh, they will commercialize non-traditional crops such as corn and soya. Now think about this. 2020, this government brought a consortium together to do corn and soya on large scale. By 2025, we will be self-sufficient. That's what they're putting in their so-called expanding of the non-oil economy. I don't need to go on here. I talk about a supportive environment for small business. They're the ones who layered a series of taxes, from higher water charges, land charges for the farmers, higher VAT on pesticides, fertilizer. They put to a business license, almost increased by 500% the fee for a business license in that period. The small businesses collapsed in large numbers in the 5 years on the APNU. So this is their development strategy that was unveiled, that Stabroek News called their development strategy. This is pathetic. I maintain, and it has Norton's face on it here too. I noticed they're putting his face on their press releases now. That wouldn't lend importance to the nonsense that is in here, even if you put 5 faces up there or five pictures up there. It's pure, it's nonsense. They have no plan. They've demonstrated that over and over again. No plan to run the country. They never had a plan, in spite of all that you hear from them. Now, I've been asked many times here about how we intend to address the 5 billion grant that was the 5 billion allocation that was set aside for cost of living assistance. So this morning, the president spoke about this matter, and he outlined how the $5 billion will be spent. Now, first of all, this is a grant to about 200,000 persons in Guyana, including public servants. So first of all, let me go through for those, because I've seen a lot of misrepresentations since this announcement was made by the president earlier today. So the first is that this is the salary increase for public servants, public sector employees for 2023. This is not the salary increase for public servants in 2023. If you look at the last paragraph of the President's statement, he mentioned that we have to announce the annual increase for public servants and public sector employees generally for the year 2023. So when that's announced, then they will get, the rate will be calculated and they would get their entire retroactive package for the year. The grant is a tax-free grant. It is not taxable. So the $25,000 will not be taxable. This grant is coming not from funds set aside for wages and salaries for the year, but as I said before, we had $5 billion set aside to assist with cost of living increases. In previous years, you would recall that when adjustments were made, in some cases, we addressed the hinterland and riverine communities. People on the coast did not get assistance. We also assisted in previous years fishermen as other categories. This year it was decided, we've seen inflation rate abate. The inflation rate so far would be less than 3% for the year. And we decided that the public sector employees will be benefiting mostly from this grant. So that includes the teachers, public servants, members of the discipline services, those in the medical profession, contract employees, those in semi-autonomous agencies, public enterprises, including GPL and Kaisuko workers and NIS workers, all public sector employees, which will be about 67,000 persons who work in the public sector, but across the public service and semi-autonomous agencies, public enterprises in the discipline services, etc. Then another 72,000 old age pensioners will be receiving this 25,000. Now, for a lot of people, it may not seem a large sum of money, but for an old age pensioner, this is almost equivalent to 1 month of their pension. And then for people who are living with disability, they will get 35,000, and there are 19,000 of them now who will benefit from this grant. This will be more than a month of as public assistance that they receive on disability. So when people look at it, individually the sum may not be a large sum of money, but when you look at it combined, it's over 200,000 people benefiting, and it's over $5 billion, which is like 25 million US dollars going into the pockets of these people. So I know people might say, oh, it's only $25,000, but remember, it's a large number of people who are benefiting from this. And then, of course, the farmers would also benefit from this. Maybe another 30,000 farmers will benefit through the assistance for fertilizer, etc. So combined, this gives you, as I said before, nearly 200,000 people who will benefit from this grant this year. So I just wanted to make that very clear. It's over 25 million US dollars, and it's going to all these categories, and for some categories of people, it means more, because especially those with on public assistance and the pensioners, they get more than the others. We decided to do it this way. Maybe about doing it on an ad valorem basis, but that would have resulted in people at the top of the scale getting more than at the bottom. And so whether you're making $500,000 a month in a government job now, and a person making maybe $100,000 a month, they would all get the same amount, because we think that the person at the bottom, it means more to them than those at the top. So I've seen all sorts of misrepresentation. Oh, this is the end of it. You're not getting salary increases for this year anymore. That's nonsense. The salary increases still have to be announced and paid retroactive in December for everyone. I'm not going to go through the other categories because you've seen the result of this. A lot of the adjustments were made, particularly if you look at two sets of adjustments that are important to us. The one where those living in the hinterland, teachers working in the hinterland, they would see an adjustment in the money and the allowances that they get for work in the hinterland, largely because of the difficult circumstances in those communities and, of course, higher cost of living in those areas. And also, there's been a differentiation based on qualification. More and more, we're encouraging teachers through the GOAL program and other scholarship programs to get better qualified. And we wanted to have a greater differentiation between and give people more based on qualifications. So if you're a graduate teacher now, you've moved to the top of the scale and you have an allowance. If you have a master's, you get a higher allowance, and you move to the top of the scale. And the same thing with those who have doctorates, both postgrad, masters and doctorates, they also get a higher differentiation to encourage more teachers to upgrade themselves, to study more, because there are numerous opportunities. So I want to urge people to pay careful attention to this. I've seen the opposition already talking about this. They think, some members of the opposition already think this is the salary increase for the year. I've seen Annette Ferguson talking, oh, you're not getting salary increases, you got 25,000 in salary increases for this year. It's nonsense. I wanted to deal with something on the city council. We've been coming we have had to deal many times with the stewardship and the management of the Georgetown Council. And clearly, some people have a convenient amnesia. They stick with one narrative, it seems, all the time. Oh, the central government is starving the city of funds, therefore the city is in a bad shape. So I've seen this Starbuck News editorial. It's called Hopeless. Basically saying what the president did, the walk around, characterizing it as hopeless. Now, the only thing that's hopeless here is the city council and the person who wrote this editorial. So what are the facts? What are the facts? Georgetown has been managed by APNU throughout, from the time we achieved independence. The city fell apart in the 23 years under APNU when the country fell apart, when we were ranked as low as Haiti and one of the poorest countries in the world. Today we have moved now back into a high-income country. We were ranked as a HIPIC country, the heavily indebted poor countries in the world. We were part of that category. The city had very little economic activities. All the roads fell apart, etc. I don't need to go back to that period. What you have seen over the years has been a progressive resuscitation of the city, and largely by the PPP government through direct interventions in the city. And why direct interventions? And until now, we have to use that as the preferred route. So somehow Starbuck News and the others have a beef that we must go through this council. We at the national level, we have returned this country to accountability from 1992 to last year. We have had audited accounts for the entire country in every single year that we've been in office from 1992. Prior to that, you had a 10 years gap. 10 years, no audited accounts for the country. Since the year 2000, if we could have done that for the whole country, the PPP, the City Council has not updated their asset register from the year 2000. We're now in 2023. And from the year 2000, they have not updated their asset register as of now. And they only have to do it for the city. But Starbuck News and the others will ignore that fact. They will ignore the fact that they have large gaps in audited statements. They have not had audited statements for extended periods of time. No audited statements. When you don't have audited statements, it means you don't know how much revenue you've collected, or no verification of how much revenue you've collected, how much you have expended, and what you have expended it on, and whether it was expended properly. So that's the state of affair at the City Hall. Thirdly, in the last year, they were supposed to pass a budget for the fiscal year 2023. I was told that the budget that was supposed to be passed in November 2022, presented in November 2022, to be passed before the end of last year, was just brought in September to the council. So practically no budget for the whole year. They have not presented the budget that they should have presented already for next year. They haven't even discussed it as yet. And you expect us to the government pays over a subvention to the city. It pays its taxes to the city. But you expect us to hand them money to do a road or the canal. Our experience has been, if you hand them money, they'll spend it on something else, but not the road and the canal. So what have we done over the years? Every single road in the city, and the roads are now in a good shape, has been built by the central government, running into billions of dollars. Every stoplight you have seen in the city has gone up because of the government. Garbage collection, garbage used to be in a dump site in the city. We spent nearly $15 million to build another site outside of the city to take garbage from the city. We've been putting in pumping capacity to deal with drainage issue, the Lilendal pump, etc. I can go on. I can go down the long list. But you expect us to work through an unaccountable city council. They've done nothing except collect money and spend money. Even the amnesty. Why doesn't Starbuck News ask them, why is it that you want an amnesty of the sort that you are seeking, where you can sit in a room and quietly negotiate with people write-offs? Why don't you announce an across-the-board amnesty, where the provisions are quite clear and in the public domain? But they think we must not do anything. We must just work through the inept, corrupt, useless city council run by APNU. We must put our faith in them to deal with the problems of the residents of Georgetown. And if we do so, nothing will happen. Absolutely nothing would happen, because they have been running that place and running it down for a long, long period. So we have made it clear a very long time ago that the residents of the city deserve to see the progress that is happening in other parts of the country too. And we will work directly with them, even if it means getting projects to clear their alleyways and fixing their roads and fixing their drainage. And the people in Alberton and Kingston who came out to meet the president, they don't believe his visit there was a hopeless one. In fact, they engaged. First time they're seeing, maybe for a long time, a public official going into their community concerned about that, what they're doing. But this suddenly gets the Starbuck News hot under the collar. And oh, it's hopeless that the president would visit here. But they will turn a blind eye to all the deficiencies of the city council. It seems it is becoming a pattern now. All the transgressions that were serious transgressions of the procurement system under APNU, where they collapsed almost the entire procurement system that we have from 2020 been rebuilding, seem to be ignored totally. But the president will continue to visit communities. We will continue to work with people. And the residents are turning out, and whether they live in Georgetown or they live in Port Morant or wherever else, and if they need help and it's not coming from this city council and they don't have any hope that it will come from the city council, then we will address it. We'll address it. I met with a group in the city to do the 30 grounds in the city. All of the grounds we've identified for upgrade. These are sports and entertainment facilities, so that the children who live in the city will have access to this too. Why would City Hall do that? They're busy trying to get the amnesty passed so they can have a hustle there. One of the reasons they don't want an asset register is so they can sell out the land too. That's right. If you have everything on an asset register and it's all public property, then you can it's hard for you to just wake up one morning and cut a deal like what they were doing in the city, selling out the land. And you recall the local government elections, they were accusing us of trying to sell out people land in All Boys Town because we built the boulevard there. So this is to call an editorial saying President Ali's visit to Alberton was a hopeless infringement on the separation of powers. They understand separation of powers now. That's a hopeless editorial, as I said before. It's hopeless. And they just throw some softball at the mayor. He wants to work with people rather than clean up the municipality. there are quite a few issues on the in some other areas, but I planned a short press conference today. Marcel, like you have, oh, sinus. I thought because I criticized that a bit, you're right. So look at this headline. Extreme heat sweeps the world from Europe to the US and Japan. Extreme heat. Climate change, the record summer that scorched Asia. October heat wave expected in parts of Europe after countries record hottest ever September. Record-breaking summer, over 6,500 persons daily. US heat records. Records everywhere in the world. The world is hot. Now, scientists around the world have weighed in, and almost the 100,000 scientists who've contributed to the IPCC and other scientific academies around the world have all concluded that global warming is one of the likely causes of the heat wave, but it's compounded by El Nino for this year, particularly in some parts of the world. So it's scientifically proven by all the academics in the world, etc. And they have also said to the world that that carbon emitted any part of the world has the same impact on the world as a ton of carbon, say, emitted in Guyana. So the solution has to be a global one. Here that the developed world puts out the most carbon. In fact, Guyana's carbon footprint is so tiny, and because than we put into the atmosphere. Very few countries are in that position in the world. So then explanation for climate change globally and why this heat wave is taking place. And the
heat is on. Guyanese cannot sleep comfortable at nights anymore, nor can they spend 10 minutes during the daytime outdoors. Temperature is solely from El Nino. It's from Lisa 1 and 2, flaring, and the dumping.
Warming is caused by Exxon dumping hot water in the sea and by flaring from Lisa 1 and Lisa. On Lisa 1 and 2 now. There's no flaring because we put in a carbon tax. And you know, all this global temperature, if extend the heat wave globally, and we wouldn't be so hot here in this room and elsewhere. This is the parallel universe that we live in Guyana, called Guyana. And this is what we have to contend with every single day. It just gives you an idea of how difficult it is for policymakers to address this. How am I going to go? I should go to COP in UAE and say, we have a scientist in somebody dumping hot water in the ocean, Exxon from one vessel there, and there's flaring, he said, in Ghana, which is not, that's what's causing global warming. If a person could be so far off from the target on one topic, just imagine how distant he is from even more complex issues. More complex issues like audits and ring fencing and all of those. This is a straightforward issue. I think a child knows this now. What is causing global warming? It's been so much in the lexicon proven, in disputes this anymore. But can you imagine all of this hot water that Exxon is dumping? They're causing the heat here, the heat wave. And he goes on to talk about the policemen don't have AC. So if Exxon turn on this hot water that they dump in the ocean. That's the kind of thing that we deal with on a daily basis. So I'm sorry I had to do that, because you can't respond to people who are or with technical arguments. No matter how much I come here and prove or give technical arguments or evidence contrary, you will always have these extremists, unscientific, and that's a benign thing, really stupid views of the world and of issues being portrayed daily. And it just gives you a bit of what we have to deal with every single day. I'm going to end here. Thank you. I surprised you with a short press statement today, right? I'm giving up a little break.
Hi, good afternoon.
Yes.
Just two quick things I wanted to follow up on. The first is about the carbon credit 60% that goes in different communities. It's yet to receive those funds. And secondly, some of the carbon credit expenditure, you mentioned that some of those funds.
So the first thing is that the funds are in bank accounts owned by the communities. So the pace at which is fulfilling the requirements, and most of them have already done so, which is to have a village plan for the use of the money approved by 60% of the villagers. So almost all the communities have submitted their plans. So the figure, the 17, will move based on at a pace at which they're ready, not because government is holding it back, because the money has already been placed in accounts that they have. So I can't give you a daily feedback on that, because that's managed by the ministry. But by now, I assume that even more of the 17 communities have already received their funds, because people want to utilize their resources. But all of it is already, every cent that's been placed in bank accounts owned by the 242 villages. I'm pleased that the NTC has came out against the withdrawal by the APA of that appeal, to say, basically reiterate that APA doesn't speak on behalf of these villagers, and they can't credibly file an appeal in the name of Amerindians when they live their Georgetown base, and all 242 villages want the program to go forward, and they are the only ones who don't want to go forward, largely because of political reasons, and purely political reasons. The funds for adaptation from the the allocation, the first sale of the 30%. So those funds now are in a bank account, as I said before, and we've already had almost a year and a half now consultations on some of the infrastructure work that we've had to do in some of the regions to address flooding, or basically address flooding or irrigation. I met maybe a year and a half ago with people from the Pomeroon and Region 2, the rest of Region 2, 3, 5, and 6. These were at the convention center at which the NDIA made presentations outlining some of the projects that we would embark upon in these communities to address issues of water management. We didn't await the receipt of these funds. For example, in the Pomeroon, we went ahead, we awarded a contract to dredge the mouth of the Pomeroon, which was causing issues there, and we bought 2 excavators with pontoons, and they were given to the communities, the upper and lower Pomeroon, to be managed by the communities to deal with the empoldering of their lands and putting in drainage systems there. We've made a commitment now from these funds to buy an additional 2 pontoons and excavators, so now they will have 4 in the Pomeroon to address flooding issues there. And I can go, but the plans are there, and we've already started implementing many of those. In the canal area, you would see a lot of work being done already. About $2 billion have been spent in Region 3 on structures and pumping capacity now that would ensure that the flooding that takes place around the canal area, that whole area, that's alleviated. We're doing the same in Region 5 and 6.
Yeah, just ask one more thing. We saw the reports about the early release of Reasonable Falls Mother and concerns about that. How much is the government concerned about this, but also is anyone being held accountable?
So the president was very upset about this. At 12:45 last night, he called me to ask me if I knew about it, because he was livid. And he has made it clear. You saw the statement. It's fully reported, I think, by news source and others. So it's in the public domain already what he was told, that there was a miscalculation by the prison authorities of the reduced sentence that the CJ had imposed on this individual. He said that that's not the position of his government. He made it clear to the media that that's not the position of the government, and it has to be fixed. And as we're speaking now, it's being fixed. The prison authorities have either issued a statement or to issue a statement shortly, and the named individual would have to return to prison to serve out her remaining sentence. When the full investigation is completed, then questions of accountability as to how this happened will be addressed. But right now, the position of the government of Guyana is that this cannot stand, this early release.
Officer and Asset Insurance. And sometimes refuse to hand over the raw production data to the auditors for the verification of their daily production. Does this concern you as the head policy in the private sector?
So I was trying to find out whether I saw this in the public domain without getting into the details of the audit. As I said before, I wanted this to be purely technical. Whether this raw data is with the ministry. And the raw data is with the ministry. The auditors can get that raw data from the ministry. So I was hoping that if they didn't get it from Exxon, if that is true, I don't know it's true because Kaichor takes one issue mentioned, a word mentioned by the auditors, I've spoken a bit, and builds it up into a story that is very far from the truth. So the truth will emerge, but if the raw production data has to, because of the PSA, it has to be supplied to the ministry. And the ministry is in receipt of it. So if the auditors could not get it from Exxon, they can get the raw production data from the ministry and then verify whether the sales data matches the production data. But this data is with the ministry. But the auditors at some stage, since I hope that they will address this themselves.
Secondly, former use of the municipal office as a dishonor account. Do you agree with that?
Every week, Kaichor News creates its own headlines. It rolls out a ton of people to say things that are consistent with its own views, and then they will come to ask me to comment on their headline. I don't have too much time to waste, because if these matters have been dealt with ad nauseum, and it's not anything new. It's not anything new. And any sensible person, if they've read Kaichor News 3 years ago, and they read it today, they will see they have not moved on to anything new. It's the same issue that they're mentioning. And by the way, I got something for you too. Maybe you should give it to Glenn Lal, who keeps saying this. I may have it here later to give it to you. But it's nonsense over and over again. Whether it's haunt or no haunt, right? I see Ramjatan now saying it's a great contract that they signed. It's the best contract they've ever signed and all of that because of geopolitical reasons. Now, it's not the great contract. It's not a great contract. It's a lopsided contract. He doesn't have the courage to say that. The fact that it's good to have Exxon there for geopolitical reasons is not an invention. And they didn't sign the first contract with Exxon. It was signed in 1999. It was signed by Janet Jagan. Exxon resumed exploration or came out of the force majeure in 2008. They started resuming exploration after that. For him to take credit for this lopsided contract and say it's the best contract, and it's nonsense. So I'll find it for you later, and I'll give you something. I'll give you something to take to Glenn Lal today, so that he could. But that would make a difference. He just go with his madness all the time. Yeah, it would make a difference.
Finally, as someone holding responsibility for the natural resources sector,
that I don't hold responsibility for the natural resources sector. Vikram Bharat does. I have oversight over oil and gas and environment, and I work on the economy too. These are three areas that I work on. So that is it. And by the way, you asked when the end of year press conference by the minister will be done sometime next week, he told me. So you'll have a chance to ask about all of the other sectors under his portfolio, including gold and forestry and everything else.
Good afternoon, sir. We have Nigerians
Yes.
away from the oil and gas system. Has the United States government made approaches to your government for the establishment of a military base? This is in relation to the Venezuela issue.
No.
And
No, the answer is no.
Correct. Posed by Venezuela, would your government be predisposed to having such a base if asked by the U.S.?
We don't conduct public policy at a press conference on their. We don't do that. So the answer is straightforward. No, we have not been approached by the United States to establish a military base in Guyana.
Concerning the issue with the calls for Guyana to break diplomatic ties from Israel, I don't know if you would need to comment on that as well. What is your personal opinion on that?
I think all of these matters have to be studied. We have made it clear as a party and as a government where we stand on this issue. We believe there must be a ceasefire now. We condemn the killing of innocent civilians on both sides, but the violence against the Palestinians is disproportionate now. Nearly 5,000 kids have been killed. It's unconscionable the way this war to ensure the safety of Israel is being prosecuted. It's unconscionable. And therefore, we support a ceasefire now. We also believe that it's overdue now, that the Palestinians have a right to live in a country of their own. We support the two-state solution, whilst Israel has a right also to live in safety and peace on its border. But the Palestinians have been under occupation for too long, and that the world has to turn its attention to a definitive solution at this point in time. We don't see the Arab world breaking off relations as yet with Israel. We don't see the Arab world breaking relations with Israel at this point in time. So I don't think that issue was ever discussed at the national level, and I don't think it's warranted at this point in time. But it is unconscionable what is happening there now.
My last question. As General Secretary of the PPP, can you say that conference will be held?
It's the first quarter of next year.
I serve the National Governments in our regions. Some weeks ago, the President had mentioned an initiative which will see teachers being able to access somewhere around 15 million per hour in loans or something. Do you see that initiative being extended to healthcare workers in terms of healthcare workers being able to access loans to build their own? Secondly, considering the rising cost of living, do you foresee public servants getting maybe more than 10% salary increase this year?
Yeah, but I just told you about the biggest period when we had the increase in cost of living was in the COVID period, when we had huge shortages, etc. We've seen inflation rate come down to under 3% now. And so we believe that it's abating now, and I'm not speculating on salary increases here. When you look at the magnitude of what public servants have got since we took office, particularly public sector workers, they have gotten a $37 billion increase per annum over 2020. $37 billion more in the pockets of public servants. And that is excluding the salary increase that they will get now, which will be annualized. So depending on what that rate is, it will go even higher per annum. And that is from 2020 to now, per annum increases. So we believe that the public sector workers have, in fact, that is about 25%, maybe 20% of the total sum that we brought into the budget from ExxonMobil this year. Well, not from ExxonMobil, from the NRF. We brought in about $1 billion, or about 200 million US Guyana dollars, and public servants are getting $37 billion more per annum, nearly 20% of the total sum. So we believe, although it comes by creep, people need to look at the magnitude of the increases. We've seen now, yesterday we were looking at it, that for comparable positions, a lot of clerks, etc., from the banking sector have started looking for jobs in the government, because at the lower end too, where we always had problems, the salaries are nearly comparable. The salaries are nearly comparable. So people are leaving the private sector now to come and work for government in many categories, not the specialized categories like an ACCA, person with an ACCA, but at the lower end. So we're very proud that we have done this and still kept inflation in check. And I don't see any problem with assisting everyone, public sector employees, as well as people in the private sector, the rest of our citizens, with housing. Right now, it's not just the 30,000 house lots that we've completed since we got into office, but we're doing another 20,000. That's billions of dollars to develop these house lots and then sell them. Huh? Yes, I'm coming to your point, yes. So, because you need to understand context. It is not just housing loans. It is availability of lands to a large number of people who had applied in the past, including public officers who had applied up to 2019 and couldn't get a plot of land because APNU had only developed 3,000 plots. So the government housing strategy is to get more land to people, and that is why we said if you apply before 2019. I know many public sector employees, including from the medical profession, who are getting their land now. Secondly, in terms of housing, how do we build houses? So we are building a large number of houses by upfronting the money to build the houses, and then well, not public servants alone. The persons who get the houses come in, they get a mortgage, and they return the money to the government. The bank returns the money to the government. So they don't need to start. That's a program that has a massive impact on many people in the country. Then we have another program to say, if you have a piece of land that is not, say it's not the government's land, you're not getting it through in a developed scheme that the government has now, say in Eccles or one of the new schemes. But your grandparent gave you this piece of land and you can't afford to build. We will build for you too. And then we will do the same arrangement at the end, so you don't have to upfront any money. We will then, once it's completed, you move in the house and then the bank takes a mortgage over and the government gets its money returned. And then whether you're a public servant or not, you're still eligible for the free steel and cement for foundation for houses of a certain magnitude. So it's not necessarily dedicated to nurses, etc. But as Guyanese, they can benefit from all of these programs. This one with the teachers had started years ago when we had negotiated, I was president, and we had negotiated a multi-year contract, which saw at that time them receiving 100 duty-free concessions and a sum of money for housing for teachers as part of the overall package. This was since I was president. Now, so that is an overhang from that period. Now, you saw what the president recently announced, another 100 duty-free vehicles for teachers, well, of a senior level, 3 years, if they didn't benefit from it in certain categories in their tenure as in the profession, once they meet a number of years and they retire, 3 years, well, 3 years before they retire, they'll be eligible for duty-free concessions too. There, another 100 teachers. So effectively, maybe 200 per year they've gone up to now. Because like other categories were getting, like senior categories, like doctors, etc., they're getting duty-free concessions from the state. But head teachers, senior ministers, etc., they were not all getting, was a limited number. So that was an attempt to fix this in the announcement that the president made yesterday. Yeah, go on.
Finally, with regards to the necessary land issues that you have spoken about, which has been ongoing, what is the status of that investigation? And secondly, with regards to the persons who have gotten land from NISA, what is the position of those ones?
Okay, so we know who those people are, right? I think you helped to point out. So in Linden, if we have to take back land now, we'd have to take back land from the Figueras. We have to take back land from the Patterson Valerie, who are politically connected. Winston Jordan, next door neighbor here in Georgetown, who got land in Linden. So that is why when I point out to people in Linden that APNU did not, we're developing 1,400 plots of land and 1,000 homes would be built. 300 people got land in the 5 years under APNU, and they're almost all politically connected. Lowenfield too got 214 acres in that area. I'm glad that you raised it back, because this was, Starbuck News should write a hopeless editorial on that too, that whether we should take back the land, how Lands and Survey sold 200 acres, I think, to a person at Ogle. Not even identify in the coordinates, the lease coordinates they were given, where the land was, or the large number that we had to retake. And the same thing at Wales, we've had, you know, I've explained this, that we are now moving to retake a lot of the lands at Wales because of the need for the land for housing. We need to do 14,000 house lots in Region 3. We don't have the land for it. It has to be done at Wales. So several people got large land at Wales in a process that was less than transparent. I'm glad that you raised it back because sometimes we forget all of this. We forget all of this. And if you go back to my press conference when I was in opposition, I showed them maps, I named and how much land they got, etc. I don't want to belabor that point, but in Region 3, in the Wales land, there is a legal process to retake those lands. The fact that we have not prosecuted more people, we could have ended up like all day long running behind them because it's a large number. And almost all are politically connected to APNU. So it's just Patterson for some. Patterson has a few. If we had to charge Patterson for all the illegal things he did, you probably end up, you need a special judge to hear all of his cases. And Jordan too. The two of them alone. But we've just decided to move on and address other things. Yes.
I call your attention to this issue of policy that has been trending regarding the auctions. With this in that some are saying Guyanese. It's this story.
I didn't see the story.
It was been trending.
Who
The two persons.
can I see that? I don't know. I haven't seen this story, but I don't want to comment on things that I haven't seen. I guess when the due diligence is being done, but I just saw that. I don't want to comment.
But it's being put in it's already these people are allegedly at ease, but in the announcement, it was listed as a Nigerian company in partnership with another company. But with all that has been happening, government has not to date said anything about it. And I wanted to know why.
I'm just going through a press statement from GTU, and I think, yeah, welcoming part of the announcement, etc. Anyhow, yeah. So, yes, go on. Sorry, I was reading a press release that just came up on my phone. Yes, so yeah, what were you saying about these people?
Not me.
Who's saying that? Who is saying?
It's just what has been trending on social media.
Yes, but I don't deal with trending. Glenn Lal could be trending with his nonsense here. Yeah, it could be trending his nonsense. Yeah, but nonsense trends. No. Marcel, trending is, we made it clear that whether they're Guyanese, we never prevented anybody to bid on the basis of nationality. If there are Guyanese involved in other groups, I would be happy. I'm happy for that. They have to meet certain requirements. So wherever they come from, if they're blue or they're green and they come from Mars, if they come from Asia or Eskimos, etc., and they put in a bid, they have to meet some requirements. One of the requirements is that they have to pay a signing bonus of $10 million for an exploration license. If they fail to pay that, they don't get the exploration license. Okay? In the past, we were giving away these exploration licenses for free. So that's the first requirement. The second requirement is to come up with a development plan, and the development plan would be part of the agreement, and if they fail to implement the development plan, there is a massive financial penalty too. So we are not assessing people based on nationality. It is the proposal, did the proposal meet our requirements? And in the negotiations now, as you move from the award to finalizing the agreements, all of these issues will be verified. So do you have the money now to pay us the day it's signed to deposit $10 million in the Bank of Guyana in the government's account? If they say yes, if they say no, we have nothing more to discuss with them. Right? So you understand what I'm saying. But I don't, decided, yes, but you remember, you recall what was happening. First of all, Glenlal was saying when there were some Guyanese who got, you remember contracts in the past, exploration licenses. These people have no experience whatsoever. They got licenses for free. So when we were tendering, we decided, should we then put in a criterion that you should have great experience? But if we did that, we will then exclude the locals, and there was an argument that giving the foreigners advantage and preferences in this lucrative industry, and we're excluding foreigners. So we decided, so severe, we will forego the experience, because now they can go, once they pay their money up front, they can choose to have partnership. But the state will earn a significant amount of money, and secondly, there will be a short time period in which they can hold these assets, and if they don't do what they said they would do, there would be a penalty to doing so, which is the improvement. So we have to remember what we actually said here. So we decided to forego the experience just to get, not to disadvantage locals in the bidding process. And that is why I was saying that if Glenlad had the courage, he talks about how lucrative the sector is. So you got that. So, right, that was the approach.
Mr. Jagdeo, to what extent are you aware that one of the needs of the company that you alluded to is a gentleman who had availed himself of perhaps regular?
No, I don't know the individuals. Outside of the group of Guyanese, I don't know who the individuals, to meet with individuals when they put in a bid. Now, the thing is that clearly you heard about the safeguard an award. You now have to deposit 10 million US for something that was given out as free in the past. Now you have to deposit 10 million US dollars in the government. If you're a person who don't have that means and you come to the table, you may have been awarded, but we would not conclude with you. So it's as straightforward as that. So that is the seed, and that's why we put in such a signature bonus. And then the second thing is the financial penalties for getting a block and not investing.
Aren't you also looking at the integrity of the persons who are bidding rather than just only the monetary benefits that you bring to the country, the financial benefits?
Yeah, but the integrity of the person in a bidding process, we should not, like, I don't know, for me personally, I don't want to meet with any individual who is bidding, because government officials must not meet with people who are bidding. It is the technical team that we have when they present the report. We have now awarded on the face of the bids. They have to, in each of these cases, they have to come back to the government to say, in our negotiations with Exxon, to conclude, Exxon has said they don't want to sign this agreement only if these adjustments are made. They have to come back to us. As you heard me comment on that already. They'll have to come back and say, these are our findings on this group, every group. The only group that I am familiar with is this group of local people, and I'm very pleased, the local group. I'm very pleased that they have the resources. They said, they assured us they have the resources, and I'm very pleased that they won some awards.
Are you aware whether the technical...
No, well, what you're saying is news to me, but I will definitely draw it to their attention, the technical people, and maybe when the minister meets next week. I don't want, when politicians meet with bidders and all that sort of thing, it gets into murky waters. That is precisely what I'm arguing about at the city council, that they must not meet with people that they are giving amnesty to. It must be an across-the-board system, and then have it done at a different level. The town clerk administers the program based on certain rules that are set. And it only comes back to the policymakers in the form of reports. So if the policymakers now see a report, this man is a convict and something else, right? Like he is convicted for money laundering somewhere in the world, and he's probably laundering the $10 million here. Then that raises a red flag when it comes back in the form of a report. So that is how we operate. We're trying to keep the political people away from these technical things.
Okay, Mr. Chairman, I have some questions. One, why the United government has not been engaging electoral bargaining with the recognized unions in exchanging proposals and looking at where perhaps how the increases in other conditions can be awarded rather than just proposing?
I'm aware that the government has made good faith efforts to deal with some of the unions. I believe that in the GTU itself, in this case, there are people there, the leadership, who would like to keep the union in the sphere of industrial relations. I think people like Coretta McDonald, they want to politicize this and to weaponize the GTU to be pro-APNU and to push APNU's demand. And somebody like her who should know better, because she came to my office when I was leader of the opposition, trying to get me to speak up about some issues and to even arrange meetings for them, because the APNU was now meeting with them. And to weaponize that now. It's the weaponization. We have a duty to the teachers. It's ideal if you can work with a union that has teachers' interests at heart. We've seen how the 100 vehicles, duty-free vehicles, when I had that agreement It was with the teachers union for them to administer the 25 million per year housing grant, and for them to administer 100 vehicles and decide who were going to get the duty free. And they started using it for all sorts of purposes. Friends, family, politicizing it, excluding people, etc. So we're always interested in having good relations with the unions. But when you look at it, they make some outrageous demands. Oh, we want 100% increase. We want 50% increase. Where in the whole period under APNU, they didn't get that. And they're arguing for 50% increase now. And I just told you, we've already spent, public sector employees got $37 billion more per year from 2020. That is what they're getting now.
Regardless of their political persuasions?
No, not political persuasion.
Should the negotiating process go ahead in keeping with the law, in keeping with the recognition of these unions?
Yeah, but the engagement, there's nothing that precludes a government, like in this case, like the president meeting the people. He made it clear. A lot of teachers have approached us directly. They're dissatisfied with their unions. These are citizens too. So it is something that if we could improve relations with the union, look at the TUC. You saw the TUC conference. I have some things about them calling for all sorts of things. Lincoln Lewis is a rabid anti-PPP person, rabid, and the entire TUC has been converted into that. You look at the people who were at the conference. So, all right, Carl Greenidge speaks. So he was a former finance minister. So when you look at all of the other people who are resource persons, it's the entire APNU leadership. These are resource persons to the GTU conference. Roysdale Ford, what standing do they have? But the government is totally excluded from it. And it becomes part of the PNC leadership. You think they're interested in engagement? The GTU? Not the GTU, the TUC, the TUC.
The Public Service Union, they have also said that you have, well, not you, but your government has not engaged in collective bargaining.
I am aware that there have been exchanges of correspondence. I can't tell you detail there, but again, the demands are outrageous that they didn't make in the years of APNU. So my point is that we're interested in working with representative bodies, but we are not going to abdicate our responsibility to citizens of this country. We are not going to do that. Once it brings benefits, if we're taking away benefits from people, that's different.
My last clarification is also to listen. On the same note, your party has been cited as one that only looks favorably upon a union such as GAO, because GAO is closely linked to your party. How do you relate that back to your criticisms of the political interests?
I don't recall that we have negotiated with GAO any increases for the workers. When we give the 250,000 grant to other workers who are laid off, we didn't clear that with GAO. You think we cleared it with GAO? We gave each of the workers, 7,000 of them, who were laid off under APNU, pursuant to a promise we made. We didn't go through GAO. We didn't get the approval of GAO for that. So I'm just telling you, but I'm telling you, this is we did not. We're government. That's a public corporation. Public corporation. I'm telling you, when we intervened there, we did not. You think the president didn't call GAO to consult on the 25,000? So,
outside taking is what is the legal and regulatory process for Chevron to enter Guyana to replace this? And has that processes started?
Did I not share with you the last time I was here? Maybe not the last time, but two press conferences ago. The legal opinion from the ministry. I don't think you got it, where the ministry indicated that Chevron acquired Hess International. Hess Guyana is a different company. If there's a change in ownership here, then there's a requirement to clear that with the ministry. So I will get that opinion and send it to you.
And certainly, sir, I understand the clarifications by the President. The opposition has called on the government now to allow Venezuelan foreign candidates to vote in the 2025 elections and for the names of those registrants to be made public for a specific scrutiny. What's your position?
So who called on that not to vote?
The lines of change in particular, and I think to some extent.
Who said that they must not vote?
PSC and to some extent EPA.
To some extent, the individuals, I was just interested in knowing the individual. Who, is it a statement or is it that the individual said this? Ramjatan. So Ramjatan said that. Now, last week when I spoke, I saw a headline in your newspaper, in the Moral Wave, saying, Jagdeo said that Venezuelans must be allowed to vote. Now, what Jagdeo thinks is not important, or Norton, or Ramjatan. There is a constitution that governs this republic. And the voting rights of people, individuals here, Guyanese, are enshrined in that constitution. The constitution says who are eligible for citizenship in this country. What I think, or Ramjatan thinks, or Norton, doesn't matter. If they're eligible for citizenship, then they have to be given citizenship. And if they're eligible to vote, they must be allowed to vote by the Constitution of Guyana, not by what we think as politicians. If that's the case, then we can deprive people of their rights. So, with Ramjatan family who are born in the US, and they should be able to vote here, or come back and get a citizenship here, but because they were born in the US, and because your child, you left Guyana, you go to Venezuela, your child was born in Venezuela, and you come back now, but the child speaks Spanish, that child must not be given citizenship. So, the headline was misleading. It's not what I said, that people must be allowed to vote. It's what the Constitution of this country dictates, and we have to follow the Constitution. If we listen to people like Ramjatan, we think Russians steal the last elections, always with a conspiracy theory. And I pointed out, based on numbers, that we have not seen large-scale registration of any Venezuelan on the voters list here. You've asked Norton directly about numbers. He said something like, oh, in Region 1 we have some numbers, but we have objected to them. How many people have they objected to? In fact, the claims and objection period hasn't started as yet. So you yourself should basically deduce that this is a red herring. It is APNU often looks for excuses for losing the elections. It's not the Venezuelans who will vote that will cause bigger problems to happen. It's the fact that they have no plan to run the country. This is an inept party that doesn't how would you put a Mai Paul or a Manza Walton or this Low to run any policy making in this country? They're clueless about basic things. You think you could, or Norton himself. How could you have them manage the future of this country? They have no plan, and it's not because they're bad people. It's because they just don't have any policies. They never had, and they don't spend time on creating policies. They just focus on racism all the time, and then scapegoat. So if it's not racism, it's now the Venezuelans. Now, I've made it clear over and over again. I'm not naive. We have to look at the potential threat of people who may be planted in our society. And that is why in 2018, I was opposed to the settlements that were being created in Region 1 by APNU, because I thought it was dangerous to concentrate people there, and it would probably promoted cross-border movement, and not by people who have Guyanese blood, by a large number of other people. But we've made it clear, and I see them mischaracterizing what I've been saying, that I've been urging meeting with Venezuelans secretly and stuff like that. It's pure nonsense. It is, I'm just speaking out against xenophobia. A party like ours have always done that. And I've had cause to point out that we're a nation of immigrants, so who have gone abroad to seek our fortunes. We have to treat people decently here, particularly those who are our own people, who are coming back now. So I don't buy this nonsense. Ramjatan is the last person to be fair-minded in these matters.
Subscribe to the concern or to the view that these Venezuelans, whether they're naturalized or not, that born with these parents, that eventually they can become, they can hold a balance of power and eventually make certain demands on our National Assembly and for the country at large. Do you subscribe to that as a
these are Guyanese. Do we ask, so are we going to change our constitution? If that's the case, that's what they're advocating, that people who are born in certain countries must not get citizenship of Guyanese parentage. If that's what they want, then they should say so openly. No, I will not. I will not. I will not. I will not. It's discrimination. So if that's what APNU wants, to say if you're born in Suriname, or if you go to Africa and you have a child in Africa or in India, you must not get, that child must not have all the rights of a citizen as enshrined in our Constitution. But if you're born in the US or Canada, then you must have all the rights.
Mr. Jackson, they were talking specifically about these formulas.
Yeah, but this is effectively what they want us to do, is to deny people their constitutional right. They must say that. The biggest threat is not coming from these people and will never come from them. These people are fleeing economic hardships there and bad governance. That's what they're fleeing, bad governance and economic hardship. Their parents fled bad governance here and economic hardships. These are not the threat to us. That is what they keep, but they think it's a good political thing because people like to blame foreigners all the time. A lot of these people are not foreigners. If you think about them, they have relatives here too. So it is something, we agree that we have to be vigilant. I said that the security forces are interviewing people, they're watching trends, they're seeing who's coming, they're seeing we have assets in communities who are looking at those who are coming here, but we will not start a large-scale campaign to treat people who have all the rights accorded by our Constitution to disenfranchise them. We will not do that. If they want that to happen, then that's a different matter. And by the way, since we're talking about what I said in 2018 too, this is what I said in 2018 in January, on January 2nd, 2018. Because a lot of Ramjatan and Glenlal says that we're saying we change our views on renegotiating the contract. So it says renegotiating ExxonMobil oil contract may be difficult, Jagdeo asserts. This is the 2nd of January 2018. At that time, we had just gotten, after a big fight, the contract released. And that's the first time we saw it. Because they, remember, APNU was hiding the contract. They signed it in 2016, and it was only released in late 2017. So this was on the 2nd of January. This is what I said. Now at that time when you're in opposition, you want to be sound as though you're going to be strong and you're going to renegotiate everything. Even then I cautioned. And you can read it. Jagdeo speaking at a press conference held at PPP's Freedom House headquarters on Church Street today, asserted that the Guyana lost significantly after the negotiation process, which the government entered with a disadvantage. You can see that. I'm not going to go through it. And this is what I said at that time too. If we can identify any contract where there was corruption or underhand dealing, that's a different ball game. I spoke here about us being very unhappy with some contracts of the past. I spoke about the Barama contract, etc., that we've had to live with because of the continuity of government. Even then, in this article, I spoke about things that we were unhappy with when we came into office, but we lived with because of a signal. So one thing you will not find from us, we're not blowing in the wind on these matters. We have had a consistent position throughout, in spite of the fact that Glenlal and the others have tried to misrepresent our position. We have kept a stable position throughout because we've assessed this issue. So since this is on 2nd of January 2018, when I said that, after the contract was just released and we saw all the bad things about the contract. Anything else? Thank you very much. Oh,
Good
sorry.
afternoon. About the comments made here about one of the awardees in the oil auction, it raises a question about due diligence. Do you think it might be prudent for the government to shed some light on what that process was like?
Yes, you think we should have done due diligence on Exxon?
I'm asking
Oh, okay.
just to shed some light on what the review process was like, because there are questions being raised about the integrity.
So the review process done by our consultants, which I saw, identify deficiencies, weaknesses in almost several of the bids, with the exception of the two major ones, which is the Total, the one that involves Total and Qatar, and the ExxonMobil. Every other assessment for all the other blocks identified weaknesses in the submissions. There were only two where they said that they met. Basically, they had the standard, all the standard, and that's understandable why. So we had to choose whether, if you look at all the weaknesses there, you would have never awarded anything else. Only those two to the two big companies and nothing else. Now, where does that leave us? With these blocks unallocated. So we made it clear that we will give them the upfront fee. The risk then gets transferred onto the bidding company. Now, they did not, I don't think they assessed the individuals, they assessed the proposals made. So that's how the due diligence was done, on the proposals. So the consultant did that, and then our evaluation team looked at the consultant's report and did that. Now, when we get to the contracting stage, this is where, because now you have to talk about concluding deals and the ability to deliver on what you put in a proposal, because your proposal was assessed. So when you come to that stage, this is where more vigilance has to be exercised.
Okay, just to be clear, when you say weakness, you mean they did not meet the minimum criteria?
No, weakness in the sense that track record, etc. Track record, because many of them have not had any major track record in working in not just shallow waters, but like the local group put in a bid for deep water, which is complex. So they did not have track record, but I answered that question already when I dealt with what Marcel raised about why we moved away from prior experience as a requirement for the bid, because that would have excluded all the locals. And we inserted instead a big financial penalty and a big upfront fee, so that if people get the blocks, they can then bring in whoever they want, and there wouldn't be a Glenlal saying, oh look, they flipped the block and made a lot of money, because they run the risk of losing a lot of money too.
Okay, well, that's going to happen in the future, right? And are you concerned about that comment being made then? Because some people are saying,
About flipping?
Yeah.
Oh, no, we don't have a problem now if they seek out partners, because they have made an upfront payment of the signing bonus. The others were getting it for free and flipping it. Remember, in the past, they were getting a contract for free, and a lot of those who so-called flipped to or brought in partners. Look at the locals. They've expended a lot of money, and now they're not moving on to a project as yet, so they've lost money, the locals, who were part in the past. So this is why we're not going to put a restriction on the future partners that they want to bring in, because it's normal to go and seek out partners and bring in other people who are more capable.
So why I raise the question is that because of the past controversy with respect to Kaishore and Kanchi, there is a narrative in the public that flipping is untoward.
No, but that was Glenlal distorting it all, and that's why I'm taking so much time explaining that. First, he had a big thing about all these local people who got blocks in the past, saying, oh, it's corrupt, look, they're flipping it, they're making millions of dollars, etc. The fact is that none of these people have made their millions of dollars as yet, because they've had to put in money too so far. So he was opposed to them. Then in a contradictory view, he starts saying, we're giving it all to the foreigners. We're not giving local. So on one hand, you're saying the locals are getting this, they have no experience, and they're flipping it and making money. And then on the other hand, you're saying you're excluding the locals. Look, you're giving it all to the foreigners. So it was a deliberate strategy, we said. How are we going to keep locals involved, not exclude them from the bidding process, but at the same time ensure that they don't, that there is a penalty and that the country gets a benefit for this. So what they would have done as per normal in the industry is to bring in partners, what we call flipping, is bringing in new partners, etc. That is done per normal. So we now have the state gets this upfront money, and then they will do what is normal in the industry in any case. So that is why we went through this carefully, because of that view that Glenn Lal basically pushed, which was a contradictory view, as like most of his views are.
Okay, finally, on the auction, how are negotiations going, or when do you expect to sign contracts?
In next week, the minister will deal with that. As I said before, they will deal with the individual negotiations, how they're taking place. But I know they're talking to all the people.
No problem. Could you say, as you are an authority on the government's oil and gas policy, what your own aspirations are for the gas strategy?
The gas strategy for my own. So the ministry, I think, has put out now the consultant and all of that. The ministry has done that. But Minister Vikram told me today he's going to put it out because I asked him to. So that would be done. So the consultant submitted this. He has to now look at all the comments. There are lots of deficiencies in the document itself, not deficiencies, but not all the areas have been addressed. So Patterson said, oh, it's a terrible strategy. I'm looking forward to him giving his views, what you're asking, on this strategy, where we should have focused more on and what his own views are. You'll get 0 from him. We know that already. So it's easy to criticize. So my own view is that I believe the time is this is the appropriate time to develop the gas resources, given what's happening globally. That there may still be a window, given this enhanced global demand and the recognition that gas will have to be a transitional fuel. There is a global recognition now that gas will be a transitional fuel. We're moving from about 3 years back when they were saying we must shut down all gas-related facilities. So given that, the timing of this issue, we have to move swiftly on this matter. And moving swiftly means getting ExxonMobil at the table, getting maybe another partner who will try to develop this industry or who wants to push it faster than Exxon. We're not pleased with the pace at which they want to approach the development of the gas assets. I think they're more interested in oil. And so my personal assessment is that they're not treating our desire to monetize the gas assets with the same sense of urgency as they are with moving the projects to produce more oil that they're focused on. So clearly we have to nudge that process along. So probably getting a partner who is willing to underwrite some of the expenses as well as the risk associated with moving monetizing the gas. Both the associated gas, that means an intense discussion with Exxon, and also Pluma, if that is in play. And so we could, following this, the finalization of this strategy once the comments come in, we would then probably have to go to RFP to see who the other partners who might be willing to work with us and Exxon around on the table to monetize this. It has to be tripartite. And because we own 50% of the gas, Exxon will own 50% of the gas. But if you don't have a development, then you can't get any of the gas out. And in the places where you have the gas being re-injected, then, and it's not being flared, tell Glenlal it's not being flared. So there might be just the hot water, right? So just the hot water. And so in those where those are flared, it's to get them to decide that that gas would be available to be monetized through a different form other than being re-injected to keep, as they claim, the quality of the reservoir up. So that's my personal view. I'm not being shy about it. So this whole thing, the gas strategy, is basically getting that. We know how much gas we have out there. We know where they are. It's now getting a partner to move on it. Make sure that we capitalize on this window of opportunity, and then we go through an internal process of seeing, with of course the partners, what yields the maximum value added to the country benefit. Is it liquefied natural gas? Is it an onshore facility? Which one will be costlier? Is it just having a vessel out there liquefying the gas and shipping it directly? Is it using it for fertilizer? Should we use the gas to generate a lot of power and try to supply Brazil? Should we use it to generate power and process our bauxite? Would that add more value? This sort of engagement, that's what we're hoping the strategy will not bring finalized, but will bring up all the potential ideas that we can use it for. So in those negotiations. So in a nutshell, that is what we're hoping to achieve out of this sector.
I would just like you to give one clarity on an issue related to the controversy with Venezuela.